Our meeting this morning. Before we get started, I'd like to ask that you turn off everything that makes a noise, that beeps, squeaks, because it will affect the people around you as well as us up here. I'd like to ask Commissioner Jones if she would lead us in the invocation and pledge.
Father God, we just thank you, Lord, for your presence in this place today. God, we're so grateful, Lord, that you helped us 4-lane 331, or the bridge, and even, 4-lane 331, and helped us 4-lane the bridge as well. We ask, God, this year, Lord, that you help us with our infrastructure needs, bring in more jobs, and, Lord, help us with the decision, Lord, and the bringing together the public and private people on the beach, and a decision that would be pleasing to all, and that would be a real big miracle. So we ask, God, that we thank you, Lord, for Sarah. We thank you, Lord, that you've helped a speedy recovery, that it could have been worse. So we ask, God, that you bless her and give her quick help. We ask, Lord, that you bless the meeting and give us wisdom as we make other important decisions today. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Larry, could you pull the chair?
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks. Again, we'd like to welcome you to our meeting today. To start off with, there's a special guest that we would like to recognize. Mr. David Kramer is in with us today. David has served this county in a myriad of ways for years. He's been on our code enforcement board as well as our planning commission. And I would like for David, if you'd come forward. I'm afraid I can't step down there, David, but Wayne is going to give this to you on behalf of myself and all the commissioners and the people of Walton County. We thank you for your service.
Thank you very much.
And we have another one coming for you. It just wasn't quite ready yet, but so you get two. You know. I thank you.
I'd like to say a couple things real quick. It's been my pleasure to serve at the discretion of the board for close to 20 years. I didn't have the opportunity or take the opportunity to serve in the military. And as a citizen, like all of you, that I didn't serve in the military, it was my civic duty to be part of what our government is. And this is how I chose to do it. And I appreciate you.
We appreciate you. Thank you so much.
And David, I'm sure you felt like you were in boot camp part of the time, so thank you.
Now's the time to consider any additions and deletions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, by the way of announcement, we have a vacant seat on our Board of Adjustments that will need to be filled. So be thinking about that. If you have any individuals you'd like us to contact for consideration, if you'll let us know, and within the next meeting or two, we will have bring back. We'll try to do it at the next meeting. The way this board functions, it has to have a supermajority to vote, particularly on variances and some of those other important items. So we need to get the seat filled. So we'd like to do it at the next meeting. So if there's those you'd like to have considered, if you'll let us know, we'll get make sure we get contacts, get the appropriate documentation filled out for them. For today's agenda, under admin, number 9, we're going to give update on the Harold Head property at Eastern Lake, and then we're going to have a discussion regarding the Oyster Lake outfall. Then under OMB, on 3.2 is a request to approve the use of budgeted contingency funding not to exceed $50,000 for repairs to the Mossy Head wastewater treatment plant. We had a lightning strike there that caused some pretty good damage. We're anticipating insurance funds to cover at least most of the costs, but we need to go ahead and get those repairs. That's the word I was thinking of. Taken care of so that the plant will operate correctly. So those are our additions, Madam Chair.
All right, I need a motion, please, to approve the agenda with the additions.
So moved.
Second.
A motion, second, any discussion among the board? Anyone in the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Now, this time, we will have public comment. At this time, you're allowed 3 minutes to comment on anything that is on the agenda. Now, if you want to speak about something that's not on the agenda, you can wait until after our regular board meeting. But this public speaking time, now we will give you an opportunity when that item comes up. If you want to wait till then, you can also speak on it at that time. But anyone who wants to speak at this time, if you would come forward, please state your name for the record and spell your last name. Even though it's Smith, I'd appreciate it if you'd spell your last name, because some people put an E on the end of Smith. So, Mr. Kramer.
Good morning, David Kramer, Kramer. I just wanted to say that under consideration today, one of the matters you have before you is some additional properties to buy near or at the beach parking accesses. After looking over that and being in the real estate business here about 35 years, I would ask you to take very serious consideration to turn that down or to negotiate in such a way that you cut that price in half, or at least better than half. Those properties, I don't care what an appraiser is going to say, they're not worth that kind of money to the public. That's my personal opinion and my professional opinion, and just sharing that with you. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kramer. Anyone else? Seeing none, are there any items that you want removed from the consent agenda for consideration?
Motion to approve consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any comment on the board? Anyone on? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Motion carries. Next, we have the Waste Management EAL.
Madam Chair, I acknowledge my conflict of interest. I've filed the proper form with the clerk, and I will abstain from that vote.
Motion to approve Waste Management.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Next, Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioners, the first item on the agenda is an update and request for direction on the appraisal received for the parcels adjoining the Health Department. If you recall, back in April, the Health Department made a request that we consider the purchase of some additional property near their facility to expand their parking. We have received the appraisals for the property, and the asking price exceeds the appraisal. The direction we're looking for is, do you wish us to continue negotiations or any other actions you'd like us to move forward with? And I'll defer to Ms. Hino to make sure I've covered that properly.
That is correct.
We just need to know if you'd like us to continue negotiations with them.
What was the difference in the appraisal and?
The current selling price is $159,000, and the appraised price was $130,000. And it's been listed for some time, so I believe we could go back to the seller, maybe negotiate.
Right, I think that would be great. I know there's times that we might need to go over the appraised amount, but I really, if we can negotiate down, that would be great.
Certainly can, and then we'll come back to the board.
Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you, Commissioners. Next item is regarding some properties that you've asked us to look at in relation to the north shore of the Choctawhatchee Bay. We're going to get this pulled up where we can see, get a better look at it. The parcel that you're looking at there is the parcel that you directed us to get an appraisal for. We have obtained the appraisal. We've reached out to the realtor and the owner. The property is listed at $250,000, and I can tell you that is substantially higher than the appraised value. So we're looking for direction to either A, continue to negotiate, B, see if you have a price that you would like to counter to them with, so we can keep the process moving.
Are we talking about the small piece?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, the little triangle.
I would say let's offer them $50,000,
Okay,
and with some room to wiggle if we need to.
all right.
I know that's quite a bit down, but the building would have to be torn down, and I don't think you could build back. It just really is really good. Would be good for the county. I don't see really big
The
need.
dock would have to be, that dock that's out there would have to be torn down, I would assume.
The only drawback is it has a big billboard, but we might even could utilize that. Well, we'd have to lease it, but
Mr. Enfield's making
I'm trying to get Rick to
Right there, okay. I wanted to take a look at what the property appraiser had, and one more down. Okay.
0.6 acres.
And how much is it again?
167 land value.
You know, if we're gonna spend that kind of money, maybe we should spend it all on maybe one side,
Okay.
would be my thoughts. What do you think?
Unless we could get it way down.
Way down, way down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Between 50 and 70.
I would concur with Commissioner Jones to offer him 50 and see if that goes anywhere.
Okay. We will do that.
Do we need a motion to that effect, Mr.? Okay.
We're good to go. The next parcel in that vicinity is immediately across Highway 331. This is the parcel that has the beach area adjacent to it. It is listed for $825,000. I believe it's a little over 2 acres. And today, that's just information. If it's something we want to pursue, we can certainly A, negotiate, or B, have that parcel appraised and base some negotiations on that appraisal.
Well, that's the position I would take. Let's just go ahead and get it appraised, and we'll know what we can do from there.
Okay. We need action from the board to do that, so make that a motion.
They'll put that in the form of a motion.
We have motion and second. Any discussion? Ladies and gentlemen, anyone in the audience like to discuss this matter? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Motion carries, and we'll move forward with that.
Okay, the next is there are 4 parcels that have common ownership. The first that you see there in the outline, then the parcel immediately north of that parcel, and then the 2 parcels to the west of that particular parcel. If you can see on the aerial there, that the parcel that we have outlined there is the one that has the dock and the boat slips constructed on it. Had conversation with the owner of those properties. He would entertain selling them. He does not have a asking price. His direction was that if we were interested, just to make him an offer on any one or any or all of those. So we don't have a basis for a price. If we appraise the property to the south of those, we may give a better feel of what that value may be.
Mr. Jones?
Yes, sir.
Rick, before you move it, that's great. No, go back.
The one you had.
The one you had.
There you go.
All right. Just to the right or to the east of the line there's a little finger area that goes up towards Bay Grove Road.
Yes, sir.
I'm not mistaken, isn't there a culvert and access point right there?
I believe there is.
I think,
yes, sir.
I recall seeing that. So there's access into either one of those parcels here.
And I will tell you, if you, the first house that you see there to your left, which would be to the west, and then just immediately west of that, that's a county easement. So there may be opportunity for a boat ramp off that easement with parking down on some of the other parcels.
My opinion would be, if we're going to get an appraisal on the one, let's get the appraisals on these 2 to see if we can establish a reasonable price that we might be willing to consider at a future time. So that'd be my motion.
Okay.
Second.
All right, we have motion and second. Any discussion among the board? Anyone in the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Very well. Thank you, Commissioners. The next item is a request to move the August 9th, 2016, 4 o'clock regular BCC meeting from South Walton Annex to the Walton County Courthouse here in Defuniak, and move the August 23rd, 9 a.m. meeting from here in the courthouse to the South Walton Annex. The supervisor election will be utilizing this room for early voting the week of August 20th. And so the simple ask is to swap the locations of the meetings in August.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Quick question. Would the morning meeting go to the south end and be a morning meeting down there?
Yes, sir.
All right, any more discussion among the board? Anyone in the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. Next item, Mr. Wilson will make a brief presentation regarding the change of the hosted voice over internet protocol provider to ITS networks.
Thank you, Mr. Administrator, Madam Chair, and board members. I've got Jed Sconders here with me from the Clerk of Courts, and as you know, we've been working together a lot lately to try to provide the best services we can for our employees, board members, residents alike. We've had a major issue with our phone system here. I know that we're all familiar with this. I'll be very brief. You know, CenturyLink sold us a platform 5 years ago. They abandoned that platform 6 months after they sold it to us with no assistance in changing us over, no, look, we made a mistake, we're going to make the situation right. They sort of just left us to dangle with virtually no support on our system. So what we're asking for you to do is to make a change to a more trusted system, which is Cisco hosted systems. ITS is on a current state contract, and that's what we'd be asking you to do, is to change our services from what we have right now to ITS services. It's about a $400 increase per month, but the functionality that we're going to get with that far outweighs that minor increase in cost. The major question that we have for you guys, I think we all know the phone situation, is whether we should purchase or lease our handsets. Last week, I think we lost 6 to 8 phones from lightning strikes. Every time that happens, we have to buy a $300 phone. With this option, it allows us to lease phones for $4. If the lightning strikes tomorrow, they come back and replace them at their cost, so we're out of the equipment business. It makes sense to me and Jed and the clerk and you know, Larry Jones County Administrator, as far as we can see, this makes the best sense. But we leave that decision up to you guys. I put it on the screen what the difference between purchase is versus lease. You can see a total there for a yearly lease cost versus purchasing the equipment. And purchasing the equipment doesn't factor in replacements for lightning strikes, anything else that may happen. So with that, Jed is here to answer any questions you may have. He manages our network, so he'd be able to tell you better than anybody the situation that we've been having and dealing with CenturyLink, but we'd be more than happy to answer any questions you may have.
I certainly share the frustration that the folks has been there, and I believe the lease option makes more sense, so that if there's any change in technology, not that we're changing technology rapidly, we could accommodate it more through a lease option than by purchasing it and then being out of date in 6 months. A motion to approve the lease option.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Any further discussion among the board? Seeing none, anyone in the audience? All those in favor? Aye.
Thank you, Commissioners.
May we say praise the Lord.
Thanks, Commissioners. Next item is regard to the Choctawhatchee Beach Mouse permitting process. If you recall, over the recent past, we've had some interaction with Fish and Wildlife folks regarding the beach mice along our shoreline. I just want to tell you that we are making some progress with them. We have recently received there he is.
Ain't he cute?
Kind of wasn't expecting that, but so we have recently gotten a revised map from them, and they're indicating somewhat the same as what they have before. They're taking out the state parks, then the rest of the coastal property will lie within 2 zones. One of those zones, they will allow construction with the execution of an agreement that says these are the things we'll do, and that would occur here at the county, and we would send that off to the Fish and Wildlife folks. However, we would have no responsibility as far as enforcing any of those conditions. The most critical habitat would still require them to go through a permitting process, but it's on a much smaller area than what it originally was, and we're still working to refine the details, but just wanted to give you an update that we have made some progress, and at the end of the day, there will be some areas that the Fish and Wildlife folks will review for permitting. However, we have, in those discussions, we told them the importance of it not being a 2-year process, and we've had some discussions with some of our legislative folks at both the state and federal level regarding that. But primarily, a much larger portion would be relegated to a simple affidavit that the individual requesting the permit would sign off on, understanding the conditions that they're agreeing to. And again, we would fire that off, and it would be their responsibility to monitor those conditions. So no action needed. Just want to give you an update of where that's some progress that has been made.
I just want to ask you, has anybody ever seen one of these critters?
I think I have.
You think you have?
I think I have.
I've lived here a long time, and I've yet to see one, but anyway. Go ahead, Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Commissioners. Next item is a request to make improvements on the county-owned parcel at the corner of Mull Drive and US 98. That is a location of one of our most used recycling trailer facilities. What we're trying to do is add some barriers and beautification to that area so it doesn't look like recycling trailers sitting out there by the road. We're asking you to approve not to exceed price of $44,000, which will include a fence, landscaping, and some irrigation well and security cameras.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Anyone in the audience? Saying none, all those in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. Next two items are somewhat related regarding the disposal of indigent bodies and unclaimed bodies. I'm going to let Ms. Hino brief you on what progress has been made on those two areas.
Commissioners, as you recall, back on May 24th, we heard from a couple of funeral home directors at our board meeting, and I was directed along with Attorney Davis to meet with those, and we did last week. We reached out to all Walton County funeral home directors. However, only one showed up to the meeting. So I believe that we've come up with an amicable solution for your consideration today. The first is a resolution establishing a policy and procedure regarding both the cremation and final disposition services of indigent and unclaimed bodies in Walton County. And that resolution is in your packet. And there's a policy that states that according to Florida statute, Walton County bears the burden for paying for the burial and cremation and final disposition of services for indigent persons and unclaimed remains. What we would do is, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but the next item also is an agreement. So first I would need the board to entertain a motion to approve the resolution establishing a policy. And then the agreement is next, and what that would do is we would offer an agreement to all funeral directors, all funeral homes, and if they sign the agreement, then if they were to pick up an unclaimed or a body that they declared as indigent and then submit us an invoice, we would pay that invoice if we have a signed agreement with that funeral home. So the first action would be to approve the resolution establishing policy.
So move.
Sorry. Second with a question.
Me too.
I was awake, honest.
When we're compiling documentation on the financial aspect of it, how do we establish that they are indeed a Walton County resident?
The funeral home bears the burden of providing proof, and in the agreement, they would have to provide like a copy of their utility bill with their Walton County address on it and a driver's license, something providing a Walton County address.
Is that in this?
Yes, sir, it is.
There's a motion in the second.
Okay. All right, any other questions? Mr. Chapman?
Ms. Dede, I think we all remember what was discussed in the 24th of May meeting by the funeral directors. My concern is, what if we have only one assign the agreement and we get in the same thing, somebody else is out there, picks up a body, and then how are they going to get reimbursed if they're not part of it?
Well, they would not get reimbursed.
Right.
If they do not sign the agreement, they submit me an invoice for reimbursement, they would not be reimbursed.
Okay, do we get into that same tug of war we got from the 24th as far as?
No.
So this is not an RFP for a contract, this is?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Anyone in the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. All right, next, Dee Dee.
So the next item would be actually a letter of agreement with each funeral home for the payment of cremation and final disposition indigent services. And Commissioner Enfield, that's where it's laid out as well. There's like a scope of services, the services that the funeral home would provide, and that is, those items are listed there. And as part of that would be to determine if they're a Walton County resident, and also to use the federal poverty guidelines to prove indigency before they submitted us an invoice for payment. And we would send this letter of agreement to all Walton County funeral homes, and then once we received a signed one back, then if they submit us an invoice, then we would pay that invoice according to the signed agreement.
And if they don't sign the agreement and they pick it up, then they just got to
That is correct.
deal with it on their own,
Yes,
whatever
sir.
expense.
Yes, sir.
Who is making the call to them to pick up the body?
The medical examiner does. As I understand it, the nursing homes do, the hospitals do.
But it's usually at the family's direction. A hospital, a nursing home, or whatever usually asks a family, which funeral home do you, unless it was an unclaimed body, but usually funeral homes, nursing homes, and I'll get their direction from the family.
And Commissioners, one of the discussions we had is if a non-participating funeral home gets a phone call, they're going to tell them, if this is an indigent person, we're not picking them up.
They don't participate in the program.
They don't participate.
Right.
And we anticipate talking to the providers, nursing homes, obviously the folks in the folks in Pensacola that do the autopsy. That's where the unclaimed bodies normally come from. We'll certainly communicate with them as well.
If there are multiple vendors, for lack of a better word here, are they going to maintain a list and rotate, or are they going to just use one?
There's no provision in the statute about rotation or being fair or that sort of thing in terms of the number of calls. My guess is, and I'm just guessing, it's the funeral home that provides the quickest and most reliable service is when they're going to call.
Yeah, they're not supposed to recommend, a hospital or a nursing home is not supposed to recommend a funeral home.
But if they're not in the agreement,
But if a patient that says, I want to go to ABC funeral home, and they're not on the list,
then they have to be told they're not, the county, if they're indigent, the county will not provide the money.
I would also recommend that you talk with the sheriff's office and the PD.
Yes, sir.
Because a lot of times them deaths that they go out to probably won't end up at the ME's office, probably natural. So they need to be aware of that
We
too.
will definitely communicate this, yes, sir.
All right, do I have a motion and second? I don't remember.
So move, you don't. So move.
Motion second, any discussion? Anyone in the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. Next item is an update on the Harold Head property at Eastern Lake. If you recall, this is a property that we've discussed a number of times. I thought we had a deal at a price, and the owners came back asking for $1,017,000. You rejected that number. They have since presented to the board an offer of $925,000. We're looking for possible direction today, whether you want to move forward to that number or make a different offer.
Personally, I think that's still a little high. Let's offer them $850 and walk if they don't want it.
Okay.
Is that a motion, sir?
That's a motion.
Second.
We have a motion second to offer them $850. Any more discussion among the board?
what was our original agreement price?
$600,000.
It kind of went up when we bought that other piece of property
we
for
should've.
2 point something.
We got an agreement to purchase it, no?
I'm no more than
Just a handshake.
actually a phone wiggle because of.
And then in all fairness, it did come back at a little bit bigger parcel than what we agreed on for the 600,000. So if we could get it for 850, I think we would be doing a good job.
Anyone in the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Let's take a lesson from this.
Thank you. Public Works is going to chance, or someone going to come talk about Oyster Lake outfall and some issues we had there in the last few days, and some work that we need to do somewhat on an emergency basis to protect it. Thank you, Chance.
We were in a situation where that lake elevation at Oyster Lake had gotten up to probably about 5 to 6 feet above regular sea level. Late Thursday night was dead low tide as well, very low surf, and that lake opened up very quickly, ran out of the little channel there, and that wall failed, and the bridge that goes to the forehand property there, the approach slab, was in jeopardy of falling in, and we made some emergency repairs on Friday, but we would like to get direction from you guys to make some more permanent repairs there. What we're looking at is we've already talked with the contractor that actually contacted us just to give some input on it, and talked about it in the office and with Cliff Nauer. Looking at a retaining wall from the existing 30A bridge back up the south side of the channel there to harden that area. We've got some cost numbers for what it would take. Approximate right now, probably looking at around $250,000 to get to, and there's some other things there we'd like to improve on. One is just it's going to be right now. It's sort of a weird situation where somebody could pull off there on the side of the road at night, and we'd like to sort of protect that area to keep a car from going over that. It's handrails, stuff like that on top of the wall. Right now, the 30A's in jeopardy. The lake level is down, but now the Gulf water's coming back in. That material there on the north side of the road is damp. If we get some rain right now, we're going to have some continued problems there.
Chance, are we doing the work, or are you going to try to contract it out?
No, Public Works does not have the equipment to drive sheet pile. It would have to be contracted out.
So, Commissioners, if we're going to do this, and I'm hearing that you consider this an emergency.
That's correct.
We'd have to declare this an emergency so we can go through a little expedited bidding process.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second to declare this situation an emergency, and then we'll deal with the other?
Yes.
Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. All right.
Thank you.
Next, we need,
Wait a minute.
Hang on.
Hang on. So now we want to go for the repairs.
Right.
And my question is, I know that Public Works normally has a contingency fund in their account.
Yes, sir.
Are we going to fund it from that?
I better defer to Wilmer or Buddy on that one.
Melissa, would you come up, honey?
Yes, sir. I've been looking at it this morning, and I believe they'll be able to fund this from that.
Motion to approve the funding for the repairs.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve the funding for the repairs. Any
Utilizing their contingency
utilizing
fund.
their contingency? Yes, Mr. Chair.
Question. Chance. Rick, can you throw another picture back up there?
Which one you want?
All right, that one right there. Chance, is this part of the scope of work whenever Oyster Lake Bridge was replaced?
Yes, sir.
And was it put in pursuant to the specs, what we're seeing here, this retention wall?
I believe it was, yes, sir.
I just have a concern about that. We've spent a lot of money on it, and I see Cliff, he just stood up with his hands. So from looking at one of the other pictures that's got a closer view of the nearer to the driveway, Rick, if you can find it, that one right there. Yeah. Did that water come from underneath and around the head wall or that column support right there and come back in? Is that how it got in here?
Yes, sir. It was in the channel there running, and that material just fell out from underneath that approach slab there. That's not from road runoff.
Okay, I understand. It came from the north, swept through there, took it out, so it got in behind whatever retention wall that was there.
That's correct.
I'll let Cliff answer if it's
yeah,
a
Cliff-
design or not, design flaw there.
Good morning, Commissioners, Mr. Chairman. The wall that you're looking at in that picture right there actually was only designed to be exposed about 3 feet. In April of 2014 or 15, April of 2014, we had a disaster where we had over a 100-year storm event that occurred, and we lost over 2,200 cubic yards of sand from the outfall of Oyster Lake. That 2,200 cubic yards of sand that was lost at Oyster Lake, a lot of that came from north of the bridge. And so where the wall is now exposed 8-9 feet high, that wall should never have been exposed 8 or 9 feet high. The channel was never properly stabilized. And so it's actually, honestly, it's a miracle that it's lasted as long as it has without us putting in the sand and getting it stabilized the way it should have been originally. And so that wall was never designed to be exposed the way it is right now.
Okay, Cliff, if you can see that picture right there, I think it's on.
Yeah, I'm familiar with it.
Okay. What is the plan of action to prevent that water coming this way and hitting it and swirling back and taking it back out? Is there some type of additional shoring that's going to happen right there?
I think the discussion was that we would have a sheet pile wall that would extend under the bridge, under that approach slab, so that there's no way the undermining could occur beyond the existing wall. That, I think, was the discussion that and the plan that I think Public Works is looking at doing. And so the lake got extremely high, and the outfall has not been restored since the April 2014 storm event.
Well, will the sheet piling come all the way up to the bottom of what? The bottom of the support beams that's there, or will it go up above that?
It would be towards the road from where those piles are, and it would run under that approach slab, which is the concrete that you see hanging right there.
So the approach slab is coming out, so you can drive them down.
That's right. The wall would continue all the way across there. And so we've actually been working on a permit modification for Oyster Lake for quite some time. And the game plan is November 1st to be ready to start doing the work on the permit modification, which is to recover from the April storm event. And so there's thousands of yards of sand that washed out in that storm that have never been hauled back in. And so it's really been in a bad situation since that time. And we expect to be in a position to try to fix it after turtle season's over.
All right, any other questions? We have a motion second. All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
I do have one follow-up question. Given that it is determined to be an emergency situation, will we be able to work with a few contractors to get some prices?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. All right, next, Public Works. Mr. Enfield, will you take this for me?
Yeah, Madam Chair, if I'd be allowed to step down, I'd ask Terry Robinson to come on up. Ladies and gentlemen, Terry is retiring from work with the county. He served 22 years in mosquito control, and it's been a blessing to have him. I hate to see him go because, as you all know, we've been very fortunate to have excellent mosquito control here in the north part of the county, and the work that he's done with his associates means a lot. I hate to say he's irreplaceable because nobody's irreplaceable, but I'll tell you what, big shoes to fill, and I thank you very, very much for your 22 years of service. And we have a little plaque to commemorate here. There is life after retirement. Trust me. Okay. Raymond Spencer, come on down. Raymond has been part of the District 3 road crew. Let's see, is this 37 years. A long time with Walton County. Again, you have to say nobody's irreplaceable, but again, big shoes to go in there. We've had tremendous success with the work that he's done, and we really appreciate it. We're going to miss him, and again, there is life after retirement and a little appreciation.
I'm already missing y'all.
A little appreciation. Congratulations. Good luck.
All right, next, we will have an update on Aliqua Drive.
I believe Chance Powell was going to handle that.
Powell?
Thank you again. As you know, at the last board meeting, over a month ago, you asked me to go out and collect some data on Aliqua Road to look at the warrants for a multi-way stop at Don Blizzard. I put counters out, left them out there for almost 4 weeks, and to do a good traffic analysis like that, we need a good 72 hours of data. They were damaged a couple of times. We went out and repaired them. I was able to collect 2 72-hour periods out of those 4 weeks, and I've provided a copy of the report, and I can provide one more to the clerk here. And basically, the numbers that were needed to be met with respect to volume just simply were not there. It was drastically under the threshold. There are other items that you can use to warrant a multi-way stop, which would be something to improve traffic operations, but I do not feel that that's the case here. So my recommendation is to not install the multi-way stop.
Would you have an alternative?
An alternative to
Stop signs.
To stop signs for the purpose of, I'm assuming, slowing the traffic down. That's a tough one, and here's why I'll tell you that's a tough one, because through the data collection, I also recorded the speed of the vehicles through that period of time, and I did that while the road was posted at 25 and 15. 25 north of Don Blizzard, 15 south of Don Blizzard. And what I actually found was typically you will post a speed limit based on the 85th percentile of the traveling public or other conditions if the roadway alignment deem it necessary based on the design, stop and sight distances, curves, horizontal and vertical. What I found was that everything north of Don Blizzard, the 85th percentile, was between 38 and 40 miles per hour. That's what people are traveling right now. Okay. That's the comfortable speed that people are doing on the road. South of Don Blizzard, it's 27.7 and 33. So I don't know that the road is properly posted now. I would actually recommend changing it back. I know that's hard for some people to hear and understand, but I don't agree with what it's posted at now.
What do you recommend?
I would recommend 35 north of Don Blizzard and 25 south of Don Blizzard. Given the characteristics of the road, there's absolutely no driveways on the west side of the road. It's all Eglin State property. That's my recommendation. I know that beforehand it was 15 miles per hour south of Thelma. That is approaching the end of the road. The road's just 1 mile long. And I know we modified the speed at the earlier meeting from, to include Don Blizzard south at 15. But I think it's really challenging for somebody to drive 15 miles per hour through that section. And that's demonstrated in the data collection.
Any questions, gentlemen?
And we've already done some things. We put some children at play signs,
yes,
and already done some things to make sure that our children are safe.
Yes, ma'am.
I think what we're going to probably need to do, gentlemen, is if I could have a motion to accept his report and then do whatever's necessary to implement that report, and then we can enter into a discussion.
I will make that motion. So we
Okay.
can discuss it.
All right, I have a motion and I need a second.
Second, for
All right, we have a
discussion.
motion and a second for discussion. All right, you've heard his recommendations, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Enfield?
Well, I think that's why we hire engineers to.
Yeah.
That's why we hire engineers to do these analysis and reports. And I know in the past, Mr. Powell has given us very sage advice, and I would certainly support then his report, the thoroughness of it, and recommend that we implement his recommendations.
Okay, Mr. Chapman, you have anything you want to?
Make sure I understand what we're doing here is no stop sign, no three-way stop,
That's correct.
35 mile an hour north of Don Blizzard to 20, and 25 from Don Blizzard south to the bay.
Given that the road was originally posted at 15 south of Thelma, and you are approaching the very end of the road in the last quarter mile length of the road, I wouldn't necessarily say changing it, leave it at 15 from Thelma south. Just typically you don't want to make a transition from, greater than 10 miles per hour.
Correct.
So my recommendation on the speed would be 35 to Don Blizzard, 25 from Don Blizzard to Thelma, 15 from Thelma to the bay.
In increments, slowing them down.
Yes, ma'am.
Right, okay.
And I just want to say, I'm going to vote today, but I want a policy brought, to us in the future of bringing a community together, talking. I think this just happened, and it's all about communication. I know the citizens can't make the decisions for us, but they can certainly be part of the process. So
right.
I will vote today, but kind of reluctantly because I haven't seen that policy implemented yet.
Traffic calming policy, yes, ma'am.
And it's a good lesson for all of us, but that's a story for another day. And,
Just one thing.
okay.
You're comfortable that the changes are reasonable and in conformity with DOT's criteria?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's all.
Okay. Any other discussion among the board?
Are we going
Anyone
to
in-
leave the signage that's out there as far
Leave the
as?
signage that's out there. Yes, yeah. Anyone in the audience would like to discuss this matter? If you do, please come forward, state your name for the record, and spell your last name.
My name is Tammy Levins, Levins. I'd like to hand you this. This is the paper that was on the back
To the clerk.
of the study that was done, and I've highlighted. As you see, it shows that last meeting said that our neighborhood was a quiet little neighborhood. But if you look at the percentages at the bottom of that paper, it shows out of 589 vehicles, 130% of them was 25% of that was doing the speed. 380 cars was doing 75% above. That's right past the house. On the other one that they did, out of 522 vehicles, there was only 81 vehicles at 13% that was doing the speed limit. And out of 508, it was 85% of vehicles that was speeding there. Not only that is attached there on the piece of paper at the back, you will see an email that come from Mr. Chance Powell himself that states that we have never used any kind of analyzing or anything on any county maintained road that he is aware of anywhere. And he said this is the first that he's ever seen it. And there's an email there attached that he sent me after going over it. And I also have a petition here of 50-plus people that feels that Aliqual Drive is a danger for the people that live directly on Aliqual Drive. The people that have signed that petition live a half a mile off Aliqual. They don't even live on the main road. We live directly on that road. And when the counters were put out, they were tore up several times. The data that you have was they have had to come out and fix them because I have video. Nobody wanted to see, but I have video of people spinning out on the counters, deliberately tearing the counters up. That's what we're dealing with in the neighborhood, much less safety of children. not just children, the people that walk up and down the road with flying cars. And when you put these counters in place, the individuals that would drive up to them and slow down and cross them and go on. We've even had people go out around the grass to keep from crossing them. So, that's what we're dealing with in the neighborhood in that area. So I'd like to give this is the petition of the 50-plus people that signed that feels that Aliqual Drive is an issue, a dangerous issue.
Okay. Give it to the clerk, Ms. Levis. Thank you, ma'am.
Of those 50, how many actually live on Aliqual?
Several. There's a lot.
Well, several.
We can break it down. There's probably 25-plus on there that
That
live.
many homes on Aliqual Drive?
There's a lot of homes on Aliqual Drive, yes, sir. Out of the petitions that was turned into you before, there was 13 individuals on there out of 6 houses that signed that petition. The rest were just vacant landowners, RV lots. The addresses on those individuals that signed that piece of paper goes as far as Kentucky, Illinois, Maine. They don't even physically live on Aliqual Drive.
Well, I only count about 8 or 10 out of 50-something that you said made that assessment that actually lives there. That's counting the rooftops based upon this aerial.
That's like on the last ballot slip that was given to you. There was 34 signatures on there, sir, but only 13 physically lived on Aliqual Drive. The individuals that spoke to you at the last county commission meeting, the first gentleman, he doesn't even live on Aliqual Drive. He has a piece of property that he visits occasionally. The second individual doesn't even live. She lives in Definiac Springs, so she's not physically on Aliqual Drive. None of these people are physically live directly on Aliqual Drive. So they're saying that they're not aware of any of the issues there. Of course, they don't live directly on the road. They have to come down the road, but they don't physically live on the road and deal with it day to day.
When you say that would hold true for the same people that you said signed your petition that don't live there?
Excuse me?
That they would have no knowledge. Wouldn't that logic also hold for those that signed the petition even though they don't live there? Wouldn't that logic?
The people that signed my petition, the people that lived on that road, lived directly on that road. The people that signed that petition has been at my house or there, which is not but a handful that signed it, that physically have seen what we deal with on a day-to-day basis. Either it's a family gathering they've seen it. One individual that signed it wrote a lengthy thing of where she was there and she almost got hit coming out of the road. So it is an issue. It's a very big issue. If you have children and you, on a day-to-day basis, and your children want to get out and play, they can't even ride their bikes because you have people that speed up and down the road. I mean, what brought all this on in April, I have a 10-year-old child that was riding her bike down Aliqual Drive, and an individual comes speeding down the road, and she fell off into the ditch.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Yes, sir. Yeah, you first, and then...
While he's coming, could I ask Chance, could I ask you a quick question?
Either one of you. One of you come up, and then the next
On the speed limit, it says 15, and then there's so many that are above the speed limit of 15. Do you have a range of how fast they are going? 18, 35, 90? Is there any way?
Yes, ma'am. There were speeds anywhere from 5 miles per hour all the way up to 50 plus, 60 plus, actually. And now whenever I look at that sample of numbers, I cut it off at 60 at Miley Road, and I cut it off at 50 on Don Blizzard, because anything outside of that range is just something extremely atypical. That's just some foolishness that's taking place that really the Sheriff's Department needs to address.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Vincent Wilder, W-I-L-D-E-R. I signed Ms. Levins' petition. Number one, I'm her brother, and I am the uncle of my nieces that live there, and I have firsthand witnessed some of the speed going through there, and it absolutely is ridiculous. Matter of fact, surprised I didn't go to jail from accosting some of these people that have done this just out of my tie. So I know I don't physically live on that street, but I have witnessed firsthand. And this is not a tit for tat. Last thing I want to say is I'd never challenge Mr. Powell's education as an engineer, but to make the statement that people are comfortable doing a speed, I'm comfortable driving 100 miles an hour down I-10, but that doesn't mean that I should. And so making it an assessment based off of somebody's comfort level is asinine. So I would request that we look at this based off of what is actually going on, not on a statistical data, because my nieces' lives aren't a number on a sheet. They are living, breathing children, and it's important. I understand the rights of the property owners around there. I can understand, they have some concerns about speed bumps and stop signs. I would probably be no different. But the only thing that I'm looking at, this doesn't necessarily fit a round peg in a round hole. And we need to be open-minded enough to look at the entire situation and thus not become a popularity contest of how many votes are on one side versus how many votes are on another side. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
My name is Charles Glenn Neese. I live in 193 Portland Park Road.
You spell, is it Glenn, G-L-E-N-N?
Glen. Charles Glenn.
Right. Thank you, sir.
And my property, my family has owned a piece of property on Alacor Drive since 1967 when Mr. Senefit passed away. And we have, we use it quite frequently, so I would like to speak against what was just previously said about the property owners that don't live on Alacor Drive. I certainly live 2 streets over, but I have been frequenting that property since 1967. I believe that's longer than anybody has been there. So I take offense to that accusation. And I frequent this property almost daily because it's our, we have a fish pond on it, and it's our family gathering place. That's true. But I'm there almost every day, on a daily basis, and I witness the traffic up and down the road because I'm part of it. And I don't see any outlandish speeding up and down the road or anything to that nature. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to speak to this issue? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Ida Busby, E-D-A-B-U-S-B-Y, and we have property and a house that is occupied 24/7 on Ruth Road, which is right off of, we have to drive all the way down Alacor. I was just going to say we just have a quiet neighborhood. I don't understand. I think that some discussion could be made. I appreciate y'all trying to solve this, and I just wanted to say thank you for trying to figure out what's going on here, because I don't see what they see, and it's a quiet neighborhood. But thank you all.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Good morning. I'm Becky Haney, Haney. Okay, we could go on all day about who thinks what your opinion is. I think we need to go by what the data shows. The engineer's data is not based on his opinion. They're standards. As far as who has the most numbers on petitions, I could go out and get as many names on a petition to come visit my house and give you whatever you want. We're talking about people that live in the community. Every name on my petition is a person who owns property and or lives full-time or part-time in that community directly off that or on that road. There are only about 6 homes on that entire road that are occupied. So we're looking at numbers that don't exist. So all that I would like to ask you is you allow the data to speak for itself. If you've not seen the road, it would speak for itself. Please just take the engineer's recommendations regarding the speed limits. There are statutes that guide how the speed limits should be determined. Those would be available if you need those, but there are statutes. So I ask that you use that kind of information in making your decision, not based on what I say, not based on what anyone else says. I'm concerned about safety of children. I don't want you to think that we are not. We are. I think it's just a little misrepresentation of the area that we're dealing with. So again, I ask that you just give the neighbors a chance to come together as a community. Let us try to resolve this issue, go by the data that the engineer has presented to you, and make your decision based on that. Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, it's back to you, ladies and gentlemen. We have a motion on the floor to accept Chance's recommendation. Is there any modification to that, or you want to? All right, call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries.
Can I say one more thing before we?
You can say
I
anything
voted,
you want
but I would really like to see Becky and Tammy and anybody else that's interested in, communicating as a community, and y'all just need to go have a fish fry or barbecue and try to come together as a community. I know no one wants a child hurt, so you know what? Sometimes I have ideas that maybe my neighbor doesn't. So I would really like to see that. Now, if you would like for us to furnish Mr. Jones to meet with y'all, I would, that might be a good idea as well. So, thank you.
He's a good listener and a good mediator.
Yes, thank you.
All right, next.
So, and to that light, if y'all would like to do that, just get in touch with our office, and we'll be glad to spend some time with you.
Right, and if y'all see recommendations that we can improve on after y'all meet, Mr. Jones will bring them back to us. So, thank you.
Okay, next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioners, next item is a request to approval to earmark the remaining funds allocated for Helen McCall Park improvements for the design, permitting, and construction of the new press box concession stand adjacent to the football field. It's something we've been working on for some time, but this will allow us to move that project forward.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion? Anyone in the audience have any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. Next item is regarding our continuing service professional engineers. If you recall, we did a RFQ for those interested in being considered for the continuing services contract. As you are aware, in the past, we have had 3 consulting firms that we would rotate projects through. Those 3 are Preble Rich, Tetra Tech, and Adkins. Each of those will expire in the next 2 to 3 months. So we put out the RFQ, and we had 14 responses that have submitted for consideration. We are looking for direction of how you would like those processed and brought to each of you. We would be glad to provide you, each commissioner, with those 14 submittals to do let you vet them and bring back some recommendations to do presentations to the board for final decision or any process you would like.
Well, I would suggest if they're 14, maybe have Public Works and whatever take a look at those that are actually qualified. Sometimes we get those that are not qualified, cull them. Maybe bring to us, let's say 5 for us to, in a workshop to vet and then vote on.
Commissioners, because if you do that, because they're going to be making a recommendation to you after eliminating some potential bidders, and that meeting that they have would have to be noticed and minutes taken and subject to the sunshine.
Understand that.
I was wondering if we might want to increase to 4 since we have so much work going on right now.
That's certainly not a bad idea.
Increase to 4, you mean?
Increase to 4.
Increase to 4.
To the 4 that we put under, you may even consider 5.
Oh, I see. Now I got you. Okay. I was thinking
on.
Interviewing. You're thinking numbers. Yeah,
3 to 4.
okay. Good idea.
Okay, thank you.
Do we need a motion for that? Yes. So
moved that we increase the numbers to 4 after four engineering firms that we'll have on a list after we make that choice.
Instead of 3.
Instead of 3.
Okay, but how are we getting to that point?
We've kind of got this backwards.
Yeah.
Sometimes
we kind of have this backwards, but anyway.
Madam Chair, I got a question. Maybe semantics is that, and maybe Mr. Davis have to chime in on this. We talked about interviewing them at a workshop, or would we interview them at a public meeting?
Public meeting,
Okay.
You can do it either way. Often boards will have the workshop do the interview, and then after the interview, have a special meeting to make the choice. But you can certainly do it all in a special meeting if you choose to.
You can do it all in special meeting, yeah. So, why don't we take
I can tell you from a staff position, we certainly want to represent the board in a consistent manner. We would prefer providing you with a list of 14, their submittals, and then at a meeting, let's do a compilation of each one's top 5 perhaps, or top 4, or whatever number. And then from there, we will have presentations publicly either at a workshop. And we can have as many presentations as we'd like to get it down to the 3, 4 number that you decide on. But I think that gives you the opportunity to look at each of them, determine those qualifications, and that there's a level of comfort that you as the decision-making body has reviewed each of the submittals to determine those that are most qualified to provide the services we need.
Your recommendation would be to have each commissioner review the list, submit their top 5, and then do a compilation to see who.
That's correct.
Out of that matrix, which is the top 5 overall?
Either that or the top 6 or 7 that we would bring to a meeting and let them make their presentation so you could score them on their qualifications.
Mark's
Does that
not
work,
happy.
Mr. Davis?
Well, yes, as long as that scoring is done at a meeting.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, my thought was they would each come back and say, these are the ones,
that I like, yeah.
Right.
without ranking them, but these are the ones we'd like to hear more information from.
That's as long as that's, and as long as the score sheet's part of the record.
Yes.
All right, that will be my motion, and then the end results would end up with 4 engineering firms as opposed to 3. So that's my motion that we do it, that process.
Okay. And we have a second? All right, motion and second, any discussion? Anyone in the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
Next item is engineering services for County Road 395 North road construction. We did an RFQ for engineering services for County Road 395, and they are in. We received 6 submittals. This again is an RFQ that those need to be ranked for qualifications and selections. Typically, we have vetted them through staff and brought you the top 3 to present. Unless you give us direction otherwise, that's the process we will utilize here as well.
Do I hear anything?
I'm okay with that.
Okay. A motion?
Do we need a motion?
That's a
for that?
motion.
Yes. Is that your motion, Mr.
That's a
Chapman?
motion.
Second.
Second. Motion and second, any discussion? Anyone in the audience? Seeing none?
And again, just a
All those-
reminder, the meeting, the staff to vet them
Yes.
must be.
And bring them to us, yes. All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. The next item is request approval for staff to re-advertise a request for proposals for solicitation of a contractor who can deploy a minimum of 50 prefabricated artificial reef modules as 4 patch reefs within the county, Walton County, Grayton Beach nearshore fish dive artificial reef permitted area located 0.66 nautical miles offshore of Grayton Beach in the Gulf of Mexico at approximate depth of 58 feet. We went out for advertisement of this, and we received no submittals, so we're just requesting permission to re-advertise.
Is Melinda out there?
Looks like something out of Star Wars. The blue picture.
Well, I thought you were talking about Melinda.
No.
There's nothing that pretty.
Yeah, she's Princess Leia.
Yes, sir.
Baby doing okay?
Yes, she's doing fine.
We'll get that out of the way. Is there any particular reason why you think we couldn't get anybody to bid on this?
From what I understand, there was one contractor who was trying to put in a bid, but he didn't make the deadline. So I think that we'll probably have that entity want to resubmit at the time. But we're also working within a very short time frame for getting these deployed, so that might be the difficulty.
Okay. Any other questions?
Will they sit on a pontoon boat? I can borrow one of them.
You might be able to do that.
They weigh too much.
Get 2 or 3 boats and drag it out there. Do we have a motion and second yet? I don't think so.
Make a motion.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'm going to have a chance to come back up and discuss the FDOT Service Development Grant for Public Transportation.
Yes, thank you again. What this grant opportunity is, it's just service development grant through FDOT to help basically start up some public transportation program here in Walton County. This would be a 3-year program. That opens up 1st of July. What we're seeking permission to do is to go ahead and give basically a letter of intent or letter of interest to DOT. We would work with Rob Mahan with West Florida Regional Planning Council. He's agreed to assist us in writing this grant, and then we'd also most likely have a couple of opportunities for public input to create an actual logistics plan for what we'll present to DOT. That would come back to the board for approval before the final application is made.
Motion to approve.
Second. Motion and second. Any discussion? Anyone in the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
Next item is a request to approve the use of budgeted contingency funding not to exceed $50,000 for the repair to the Mossy Head wastewater treatment facility. As we mentioned, the lightning strike that had caused some damage to that facility, and it's kind of important to keep it flowing, so we'd like to utilize these funds to repair it and then make our claim against the insurance company.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Any discussion? Anyone in the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you, Stan, for reminding me. And Commissioners, we skipped over one, but this is a request for approval to hold the tentative budget hearing for FY 2017 budget on September 12, 2016 at 5:01 p.m. in the South Walton Courthouse Annex, and to hold the final budget hearing on September 26, 2016 at 5:01 p.m. here in the Walton County Courthouse.
Motion to approve.
Second. Motion and second. Anyone in the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. What did you leave on?
I did the
You flipped
treatment plant before I got to that.
that's
one.
okay. That doesn't count. All right, Mr. Tusa.
Thank you, Commissioners, for your support today.
Hi, good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. Just a couple little things this morning. One is a request direction on 4 available parcels located on County Highway 30A and Woodward Drive for parking and regional beach access. You have in your packets some descriptions from the property appraiser's website. It shows you the property aerial views and then also some information there. Basically, the golf front property is 1.1 acres. It is about 220 feet of beachfront property. Be ideal location for a regional beach access point. We also have the property there that would be very good for parking, both on the south side of 30A and then also on the north side of 30A. The property north of 30A, that is approximately 0.52 acres, so just a little over half an acre of property. And the agent, Andy McAlexander, has proposed, and it is also in the packet, just a little, let me find here in my packet, I think it's the last page. It's just a little sample of what we can do with the property. This, again, is from the agent himself, and it is not what the TDC has prepared. But just to kind of give you an idea what we can do with the property, we can put about 50 parking spots on each side of 30A and what's being proposed here. So that might be something that we can take a look at and see how we can adjust that. I know in some conversations that I've had, we've kind of talked a little bit about what we can do. There is a house on one of the pieces of property on the Gulf front, and we've kind of talked maybe there's an option that we can maybe do something with an event venue with that home that's there. So that might be something that we want to look at in the future if we move forward with this project. But basically, wanted to ask and see, get some direction. If you're interested in it, we can move forward and do some appraisals on the 4 parcels. Actually, I believe Andy told me before we met here this morning that the 2 parcels of property on the Gulf have been subdivided into 4 parcels. So that might adjust the appraised value at that. But anyway, that's something that we move forward with the appraisal process. We can get that information as we move forward.
And if I just may add, this item was before you at your last Tuesday's meeting for a development order. So development, I think it was approved.
It was.
To move the development order forward. So that was the division of the 4 parcels on the south side. So there is an active development order that has recently been approved on the property.
And the price for those 4 parcels now, that would be $7.5 million. And then the property north of 30A, those 2 parcels, they're looking for $1 million. The property just north of 30A, that parcel, it's $600,000. And then the one that's up above that piece of property, that one was $400,000. So those are the prices at this point. The 4 parcels right on the Gulf front, those parcels would have to be purchased as a package. That individual is only interested in selling them as a package, our 4 parcels together. The other 2 parcels located north of 30A, that is something that we might be able to negotiate with if we only want one of those parcels.
And Commissioners, and I have not talked to Jay, and I apologize, but given the location, the parcels on the north side are apparently within 300 feet of this coastal dune lake. So we do have those restrictions that we've tried to change, obviously, but those changes have not come through from the administrative challenge. So I doubt very seriously under our current ordinance that what's shown here could actually be built because of the 25% rule. So we need to take that into consideration when we start talking about the price per parking space and that sort of thing. Because our buildable footprint may be significantly smaller than this, depending on what happens with our administrative hearing.
Madam Chair, recognizing that contingency, and it was over 2 years ago the board gave TDC direction to go out and try to find additional places for beach access and additional parking. So I want to thank Mr. Tusa for bringing this back. I would suggest that my opinion would be, as a minimum, let's get the appraisals, and then we can come back and judge whether we want to move forward or not. But I thank you for bringing this to the board. And bring more, because this is not just for the next 1 year, 2 year thing. We're looking out to the future. But certainly, if the situation provides for parking, which is sorely needed, and certainly for beach access, this would go a long way towards helping that. So my motion is to proceed with the appraisals for all those parcels, and then to bring it back to the board.
And I'll second that motion. Now, what kind of shape is the house in if we were thinking about doing an event?
I went out and looked at it last Wednesday, Thursday, and it looks like it's in pretty good shape. Looks like it has a new roof on it. Looks nice. So, if we want to do something with that, I think we can, explore that option, maybe get some information on it, and then bring that back when we bring back the appraisals and see if there are some options there to move forward with some sort of event venue. And then if we do move forward with the appraisals, then I can sit down with Brian and we can kind of really start looking at parking from our standpoint as opposed to what Mr. McAlexander proposed, because obviously it might be a difference in what we look at versus what he's proposed.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Anyone in the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And next up, just under updates, real quick, effective July 1st, we'll have a new zip code for South Walton, the area in eastern South Walton over for Rosemary Beach and Inlet, as well as Watersound and Seacrest. They'll have a new zip code, and the zip code will be 32461. So just wanted to give you an update on that. So it's effective July 1st.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
That's it.
All right.
Thank you.
We have a public hearing. I need a motion to open the public hearing.
Motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
I have a second. Motion and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Good morning. Melissa Thomas and OMB. We just have a request to approve a resolution amending the fiscal year 2016 budget to bring forward $73,000 in reserves. These are BP settlement funds from that 2014 settlement. They are currently being held in reserves, and we're asking to bring them forward for the Muskogee Nation of Florida. And if you'll remember at the 614 meeting, the board approved to advertise and hold the public hearing. These funds would be leveraged against a $30,000 grant with Engineers Without Borders and a $600,000 grant with the Administration of Native Americans.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Is there any discussion in the audience? Seeing none, any discussion in the board? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
Motion to close public hearing.
Second.
We have a motion and second to close the public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Mr. Davis.
Commissioners, I have nothing, and to the delight of staff, I have no late additions.
Mr. Enfield.
Nothing, ma'am.
Ms. Jones.
On the design review board, I believe Tim Norris has resigned, and I know Donna Johns has showed an interest, so we, if there's anybody else, but I know Donna has told me that she's interested in this, so if we could put that on the next agenda. And then happy 4th of July to everyone, and go out to We Care Park and support Commissioner Commander. She's doing this with a broken arm, and so we really need to come out and enjoy the fireworks together. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
That's
Mr.
all.
Chapman. You have anything?
No, I do not.
Okay. I have 3 items. First of all, we have a little boat ramp off of Mike Bayou that is very limited. As a matter of fact, you can barely get a boat and trailer in it to launch a boat. But it can be used, we've been down and looked at it, it can be used for kayaking, perhaps, and canoes. But at the end of Mac Bayou, we have another piece of county-owned property that I believe that we've been out, Chance has been out there with me, and Stephanie from District 5. We believe we can put there a boat ramp for launching boats. And this is kind of critical because it's the only place in that area where actually a trailer can be gotten in. We can get it in case, needed for safety or even security or something happened. So I am asking that we earmark $35,000 out of the vessel registration fees for that Mac Bayou boat ramp, and let us go ahead and proceed and get the necessary permits and that sort of thing, and put us in a nice boat ramp. And on a side note, I would like to say something, and I don't know who the lady is, maybe Chance does, but we were down looking at it the other day, and this lady came out of her house. She was about a block away and started walking in our direction, and I thought, I didn't know who she was, but I looked at her, and she kept on coming and all. And when she asked what we were doing, and we told her, and she told us what a wonderful idea it was. And she says, I have a lot next to my house I own, and if you want to tell people they want to park on my lot, she says, I will let anybody, and she's not talking about charging, she said we will let people park on our lot to put their boats and their trailers so that they can put in at this boat launch. I tell you what, it warmed the cockles of my heart that somebody out of the generosity, would do something like that. It kind of gives you faith in mankind again. So I will make the motion if we could earmark $35,000 for that boat ramp.
Second.
Whoa. You're the chairman. You can't make the
Oh, I
motion.
can't make, drats. Oh, okay.
Now you can.
I make the motion that we earmark the $35,000 for the from the vessel registration fees for the Mac Bayou boat ramp.
I'll second that, and I have a question
Okay.
when we get to that. Melissa? Is there significant funds in that account? Because is this the one that's got about $2 million in it?
No, sir. The vessel registration fees, it has $38,425 in it.
So we're going to give it all to Sarah?
Yes, sir.
I'm leaving you $3,000. What more do you want?
I've got several
and
projects.
we do receive these on a monthly basis from the
Okay.
tax collector. So
Well, I just wondered, because there is another account, is there not, that's got a significant amount of money in it that can be used for those type of activities too, isn't it?
There's a
Preservation.
conservation fee.
Conservation fee?
But we
There
have
is-
some
there is
restrictions
that
on how we can
preservation
use it, but yes, it's available. About $3 million.
I tend to think he's talking about the BP funds and reserves.
No, I'm talking about what he's talking about.
Preservation.
Because I just got some projects for the board to know
Right.
for the Choctaw
Can we use that
River.
money for your projects?
You ain't got enough in that one there, but I want to do.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye. Thank you. I'll say the 4th of July to last. Thanks to Public Works and a whole bunch of other absolutely wonderful people, Choctaw Park is now finished, completed, done, finito. And also, after I've been in office 2006, and since then I've been working on trying to pave almost every road in Choctaw and Villatassa that we could possibly do it. And our last holdout was a boundary line, thanks to Eglin. Well, we have worn them down, and we have now paved Boundary Line Road. So we are holding a ribbon cutting and a Praise the Lord ceremony on July the 18th. That's a Monday, I believe, at 10 o'clock at the Choctaw Park, and would like for everybody to come. But also, in part of that, I realized when Melinda and I went by the other day that we do not have any security cameras on that new bathroom, and if we don't get them, we're going to be missing toilets. That's just the way it is. So I'm going to pass the gavel again and ask that we allocate about $3,800 out of my recreational plat fee funds to put up security cameras there at Choctaw to keep it from being vandalized.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion.
Second.
Motion and second. Any other discussion?
Anyone in the audience?
Anyone in the audience?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. You're helping me. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Thank you. And the last is the 4th of July. This will be the 25th year that the Defuniak Springs Business and Professional Association has put on the 4th of July celebration. We were hoping to have a bang-up celebration in the lake yard, but unfortunately that is not possible. The lake is up probably 25 feet from where it usually is, which makes shooting off fireworks a little difficult because we can't find any dry land. So we are having the parade around the lake as usual, but it will be moved to 3:30 for everybody to come out to the parade, and then everything else will be moved out to We Care Park, which is across from the Walton High School. Actually, a really good setting for it, other than we don't have the lake to reflect those fireworks over, which is absolutely beautiful. But you know, we've been given some lemons, and we're going to make lemonade out of it. And we actually think it's going to be a really good venue. And of course, it's always free. So we invite everybody to come. We're spending about $10,000 on the fireworks this year. Shane Owens is going to be our entertainment. He's a country western singer that's quite popular. We're going to have children's activities. So we invite everybody to join us on the 4th of July.
What time did you say the opening is?
6 o'clock. We try to well, there's no letting the heat down, but we try to, you know, maybe wait until 6 o'clock. It's not quite so hot. So we invite you to join us. Next, I have citizens' request, Chester Carter. If you would come to the podium, please, state your name for the record and spell your last name.
Chester Carter. You hear that? Okay. My point of being here today is to protest and object to the Aslan waste facility and recycle facility going down the road from me. I'd like for you to put yourself in my position and consider this going into your neighborhood. And the bad word associated with this facility is leachate. When you capture this material and you get a 100-year rain event, as explained by the engineer with Pebble Ridge, as to what blew out the bridge at Oyster Bay, then you can just imagine what's going to happen with this cauldron of material that's left to sit there in this water, in this rainwater. Well, it's pollution. It's toxic. It's cancer-causing chemistry. The 100-year rain event comes along, and it's only engineered, as I've been told, by Pebble Ridge for a 100-year rain event with a very thin liner, and a liner questionable as to whether it can stand heat and chemistry. If you talk to DuPont and you want to talk about resistance of synthetic materials like Hapalon or polyurethane or polypropylene, they're all designed with limitations that relate to heat and chemistry. And when you have chemistry in large volumes, you have an unknown pH and an unknown heat factor. So Pebble Ridge has been paid to engineering this thing to a dollar amount. The budget of that parameter is determining, or will determine, what they put in here. Is it going to be a 1/16, a 60 mil thick liner of polypropylene, or is it going to be a 1/4 inch liner of Hapalon? Big difference in cost. But my point there is, with this engineering, as explained with Oyster Lake outfall, you kind of get what you pay for. And sand is not a material that you use to contain erosion, as was stated with the Oyster Lake outfall. There are other impervious materials that cost a little more that's on the second page of the engineering handbook, how to do something that will explain the better grade of material. And that's one of my point about this landfill going in down the road from me. The engineering is woefully inadequate, sufficient to all the parameters of the chemistry, the heat, the pH factors, the rain events that can occur and will occur. You say a 100-year rain event. Well, does that mean you have to wait 100 years for it to happen? You can have 3 of those in a month. That goes without saying. That the engineer is not obligated to tell you. He can say a 100-year rain event, which sounds good, but it doesn't protect the citizen like me and my drinking water and the water that my children use and swim in and so forth, and that we fish from. You know, a lot of people still rely on freshwater fish as a source of protein. It's been going on for thousands of years. Just because you're affluent doesn't mean that you're exempt. So some of us still enjoy that sustainable, renewable lifestyle. And I foresee this as a threat to my sustainable, renewable lifestyle. And if you review the information that I included, and you consider the very bad word leachate, and you look at the aerial photos and see of all the drinking water wells, the neighbor wells, shallow wells in that area, you can only determine that this may be detrimental to someone's health. The notice for this is a half a mile off of Rock Hill Road at the dead end of a non-used road. What good does that notice do to notify the citizens of this county that this is even coming up for review? The only reason I knew about it is I drove in there to look for a leaking dump truck that was leaking oil on the road. And there's a sign, 4/10 of a mile down County Clay Pit Road, which has been confusion from the word go because it used to be Ed Brown Field Road.
Thank you, Mr. Carter.
So,
your time's up. Thank you.
I don't know. I presented this to the County Commission, Planning Commission, and they have fast forwarded it to you, and all of your comments and all of your staff comments indicate that you're hiding behind the state.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Your time is up.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your time.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next, we have Tammy Levins.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Ms. Levins, did you, under citizens' request?
My name is Tammy Levins, Levins. I want to again thank you guys for considering its situation on Alaqua Drive. But I would like to ask yourself, I hope to gosh that you've not ever lost a child. I have. I've had to bury a child. I put the child's life into a board's hand to deal with it, and at the end, the outcome, I ended up having to bury. I thought they were very educated, knew what they were doing in the situation, but they did not. So I ask, y'all keep my children in your prayers since this has come before you guys, but I have been there. And you know what? It's sad to think today's time that we come to statistics over a child's life. A child's life. That's our future. They are going to eventually be the people in Walton County that you're setting all this up for right now. That you're allowing, the different situations happen, that we pick and choose what we want to do. We pick and choose, we want to go here, but it's not, there's nothing, like Ms. Jones said, there is nothing written down anywhere that we stay to certain criteria. This whole county has been picking and choosing. We choose what we want to do here, or we choose what we want to do there. That's what we do. So, I think it's a sad situation that it comes down to that we have to wait till we lose somebody or we have to bury somebody before a board that we have elected and voted to put in place to make decisions. So I hope that never happens. But it's happened to me, and I hope it never happens again. Okay? Thank you for your time.
All right. Now we have other public comment. Is there anyone that would like to comment on an item that was not on the agenda? Yes, sir.
Glenn Neese again from Portland Park Road, and I would like, a couple of years ago, we had a dumpster at Portland that the community used, and along with myself, and since its disappearance for, I'm sure, a lot of different reasons. I think I've talked with Ms. Commander about this over the years or when it happened, but I'd just like to request that because of all the trash that's appearing in the nearby area in the Deer Woods and even on our road, our street that we live on, that you would consider to bring it back occasionally for even if it's just periodically to so it can be used. Thank you.
That was my district at the time. It is now Mr. Chapman's, and it was removed because, unfortunately, the dumpsters were supposed to be used for trash, and people were using them, apparently would go fishing and dump in fish guts and fish stuffy, and it got to be quite a odoriferous situation. So is the reason it was taken out, because we ask over and over and over that people respect it. That is now in Mr. Chapman's district. If he wants to tackle it again and see if people will help abide by the rules, that's...
I'll be glad to look at it again. The main thing that I'd be concerned about is almost like it is down at Mall Drive in 98. People use it for household garbage, which is, you can't do that. So we might be able to work out something.
We have tried to use the facility, the construction facility to haul our stuff, to haul construction stuff over there on our personal vehicles, and that's resulted in a couple of flat tires, of course. And thank goodness I was driving a hunting truck, my old hunting truck. But anyway, the gentleman that runs the manager and I talked about the situation about trash appearing in the reservation nearby woods, and ultimately it's the range patrol will probably take notice of it, and then it might become a bigger issue.
Okay.
Thank
well,
you.
The thing about it is we have free garbage pickup for everybody, basically. All they had to do is put it outside the road. It's going to get picked up.
No
Why are they
complaints
still
about
dumping
that.
it in the road, out in the woods anymore, I have no idea. But we'll take a look at it.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other public comment? Seeing none, we're going to take about a 15-minute break, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll be back for our legislative and quasi-judicial items. Thank you for attending today. When they gave Kenneth, whatever happened to it?
Hanging in his barn.
Oh, okay. Kenneth. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll now begin with our legislative items. Mr. Dice.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We have one legislative item, and that is the request to adopt the Kaya PUD overlay ordinance. You've heard this before. This is actually adoption hearing for this, and this is kind of a follow-up to the Kaya PUD that was approved about a month or two ago. And I'll ask Matt Carpenter to come up and just brief the board on this this final adoption hearing.
Good morning, Commissioners. Matt Carpenter for the Planning Department, CARPENTER. This is a request to adopt the Kaya PUD Overlay District Ordinance, amending Section 2.0600 to the Walton County Land Development Code by adding subsection 2.06.04, known as the Kaya Conceptual PUD Overlay District, consistent with the provisions of our comprehensive plan and the BCC final order adopted by this board a couple of meetings back. This is the adoption hearing. This adopts that PUD as an amendment to the Land Development Code. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion among the board? Anyone in the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next, we have our quasi-judicial items. For Madam Ms. Dory, for I don't know about the rest of them. Melinda was going to print mine out this morning. The computers weren't working, so as soon as we can get them to you, we will. Okay.
Thank you. Anyone who anticipates testifying or speaking before the board on any item on the quasi-judicial docket, would you please stand and raise your right hand? Do each of you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give before this board will be the truth? I do. Thank you. Commissioners, have any of you had any ex parte contacts that you have not turned into the clerk's office?
I don't know.
Mr.
Madam Chair, on the items with regards to the Grand Boulevard, since they are part of the Sandestin DRI, I have submitted the appropriate recusal because of business reasons to the clerk.
Thank you,
sir.
Thank you. Mr. Dice.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. The first quasi-judicial item is a request to approve a final order for Graham Boulevard Building T. I'll ask Ms. Renee Bradley to come up and brief the board on this application.
Good morning. This is a major development order application submitted by Interlight Engineering Corporation, requesting approval of 38,560 square foot general commercial building. The project's located on 1.83 acres within the parcel 208 of the Sandestin Development of Regional Impact. There are no outstanding technical review comments on this project. There's been no public comment received. There will be a requirement for an NPDES permit as condition. Unless other evidence provided to the contrary, staff finds this meets the Land Development Code and a comprehensive plan. I'd be glad to answer any questions for the board.
Ladies and gentlemen, does anyone have any questions? Is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment on this project? Please come forward, state your name for the record, and spell your last name. Oh, you're right. I need to hear from the applicant first. I'm sorry. If you just sit on the front row, we'll get right to you. Thank you, Mr. Chapman.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Jim Martelli with Interlight Engineering. I'm here representing the Howard Group under their entity GB Retail LLC. And the Building T project, in essence, is a sister building to a Building S, which is just to the east side of it. That went through this commission about a year and a half ago. That building has been constructed and is operating and very successful so far. This project, Building T, is a mirror image of that, a sister building. It's a building that's in essence sitting on a portion of the existing parking lot. So from a stormwater management standpoint, it is a negligible difference in stormwater runoff because of the impervious area, impervious areas are being swapped out. I see you looking. So the building will be setting on a portion of the existing parking lot, which is impervious, and the building's impervious. So this, from a stormwater management standpoint, the runoff is negligibly different. There is a permitted stormwater management facility that we discharge to. It was constructed around 8 or 9 years ago and is operating and was certified. So that's what this building will discharge to. We are adding some parking on the west side of the building as well as the north side of the building. Our parking concurrency is met as measured by the Grand Boulevard Shopping Center as a whole. And so we meet our parking concurrency requirements there. Water, sanitary sewer, and fire protection are already at the site, so we'll just in essence be connecting onto that. So we would agree with the staff that the project meets the Comprehensive Plan Land Development Code and the Sandestin Parcel 208-308 DRI, and we respectfully ask for your approval this morning, and be glad to answer any questions you might have of me. Thank you.
There was a comment, I believe, concerning where this stormwater was going to pop off to, and that at Sandestin had a concern. Has that been eliminated or modified?
Yes, sir. We've addressed that, and actually it's on the next project that issue is on, not this one. But
never mind about this.
No. Anybody else?
All right. Any other questions of the applicant?
Thank you.
I just have one. I'm sorry. And Renee, the remaining square footage for commercial is, I couldn't read it. I'm sorry, my eyes were bad.
42,414, and that will be after the Hyatt Place is built as well.
After the Hyatt Place is built as well. So that would, if the K&H thing goes the other direction, you would still have sufficient square footage?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions of the applicant? Yes, ma'am.
Morning, Commissioners. Such a pleasure to drive up here in this small-town traffic. Susan Palladini, P-A-L-A-D-I-N-I. I represent the neighboring property to the south. It's owned by the Coffeen Nature Preserve. The land was a gift to the citizens of Walton County by Dorothy Coffeen. It's managed as a not-for-profit by a volunteer board. It's kept in conservation by her wishes for education and quiet public enjoyment. It contains our most western, globally rare and imperiled coastal dune lake, Fuller, one of the 15 state-designated ecological treasures vital to the local economy. Stormwater is it's a neighborhood issue. Due to the natural watershed of the Choctawhatchee Basin, the Grand Boulevard stormwater flows through pipes along with the highway runoff under 98 and travels south, ultimately ending up in Lake Fuller. The state recently tested Lake Fuller of part of the Basin 3 imperiled, and it was under the imperiled waters rule. And we flunked, in neighborhood terms, we flunked in nitrogen and phosphorus. So I'm hearing a comment here that the stormwater is going to be addressed in the next project. So I would like you to maybe slow down a little and address that. But I also have another concern. South of us, there's a neighborhood community of about 35 homes. We live in this neighborhood. To get to the bank in Grand Boulevard, to get to the shops and restaurants, to get to our local grocery store, we've got to have 3 clear lanes of traffic on 98 to even pull out, to get across so that we make the turn. Takes you there to the bank. The next turn takes you to the movie theater. Now, when the movie theater was built, there was a parking lot across the street. That parking lot has gone, and this multiple-seat complex has no parking unless you're lucky enough to park on the street. So, and now, because people don't want to walk that far, they're stopping their cars, they're unloading. Traffic is actually backing up onto 98 in that most outside lane. So we're already seeing some safety issues with the traffic flow through here. We've got multiple festivals where they close off the roads, and I just, if there's a regional DRI with parking and traffic flow requirements, I just don't see how this keeps tying in with building over these parking lots. So I would ask that you look a little closer at that before you approve it, because otherwise we're going to need a 14-story parking lot. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mrs. Alexander. Would you like to address those questions, sir?
Yes, thank you for those comments. I want to clarify the stormwater does not run south on this parcel, it runs north. The entire piece runs north on this parcel. So thankfully, none of it will run to the coastal dune lake. In terms of the parking, we meet our parking requirement, but I was authorized to share some good news that we are looking on preliminary design for a parking structure just north of this particular building, Building T. So although we meet it today, any future buildings will need some additional space to park vehicles there. So thank you very much.
Would that be a parking garage or just additional parking?
Parking garage.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right. Any other questions from the audience? Ladies and gentlemen,
Motion to approve.
Second.
we have a motion and a second to approve. All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
The next item on our agenda is a request to approve a final order for Grand Boulevard at Hyatt Place. Again, I'll ask Renee Bradley to come up and brief the board on this application.
This is a major development order application also submitted by Interlight Engineering to develop an 84-unit hotel on parcel 208B within the Sandestin Development of Regional Impact. There's been one public comment received, not as opposition or support at the time, which was the Sandestin Owners Association in regards to stormwater. It's my understanding that they have re-reviewed the stormwater plan and do not have any other issues with it. I believe Tom's here in the audience if he wishes to speak. There was one outstanding technical review comment from South Walton Utilities, in which I received an email this morning saying that they are working with the Howard Group to resolve their issues and that they're not opposed to the project. I have a handout, so the board needs to see that email. A parking agreement, I've requested as a condition to the development order, a parking agreement be recorded to account for the hotel parking. Because there's two different entities involved. Mr. Howard owns one piece under JB Retail, and he owns another piece, so I asked him to do an agreement to make sure that if the parking for the hotel would go with the hotel if it was ever sold. They've also given staff a draft of that agreement to be recorded. That's really all I have for you. I find that this project meets the Land Development Code and the Comprehensive Plan, and I'll be glad to answer any questions for you.
Have any questions of Renee? If not, the applicant will come forward.
Good evening, Madam Chairman. Once again, Jim Martelli with Interlight Engineering, here representing the Howard Group under their entity GB West LLC in this case. Renee did a good job giving a summary, but it's an 84-unit hotel and associated pool and continental breakfast area inside. This is the one concern on this particular project is working with the neighbors on the stormwater. This would be the project on that one. And from a stormwater management concurrency standpoint, we already have a permitted facility that we constructed about 9 years ago, and is operating. However, there are some issues in that basin that Sandestin is experiencing, so we wanted to work closely with Mr. Cooper and Mr. Stowe of the Owners Association board and try to come up with a way that we can make the situation a little better. So one of the ways we did that, we took a close look. We've revised the plans based on my client's desires to do so. And we were able to redirect about 1.7 acres away from the site to another permitted facility that we have that had extra capacity in it. We were hoping to get a little bit more, but there are tremendous amount of underground utilities east and west, and we couldn't get the storm pipe to get through all those, or we would have done a little bit more. But 1.7 acres is a pretty good effort at it, and we're very pleased to say it's going to make a significant difference. Although there still will be issues downstream, make a significant difference in that basin than currently exists. The parking is already in place. The building is basically sitting on a pad, if you will. We will reconfigure the parking a little bit, add a couple spaces in that regard. Water, potable water, sanitary sewer, and fire protection are all there, and we'll just connect onto those. And with that being said, unless I've missed something, I agree with staff. The project meets the Comprehensive Plan, Land Development Code, and Sandestin DRI. And we humbly ask for your approval this morning. And I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions? All right, thank you.
Did Renee, didn't you say you had a letter from South Walton Utilities saying that?
Would you like to have the hands out?
Just one, yeah, just let me look at it then. It's not that I don't trust you, I just like to, I'm a visual person. Hush. Thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this? Ms. Palladini?
I do have a couple of questions. Where will everybody go to the beach? Will these people be able to have access through Sandestin Resort to the beach?
If you'll address your questions to me, then I will get him to answer them.
Sorry.
That's okay, Susan. Then I will ask him to come up
Okay.
and address the
Okay.
board. Okay, so access to the beach is the...
Right. And if we have a comprehensive plan that has a 4-story height requirement, I just wondered where the 7 stories came from. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Renee, you want to respond to those? Or?
Respond to the height. I'll let Jim respond to the beach.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Some of y'all may recall that Grand Boulevard actually has a 14-story hotel approved that could be built at this time. This was based on the like-kind transfer language that a previous director had approved. Based on our legal opinion, which I put in your packets, that also stands, so they are vested for the height based on that previous determination, which is why they were allowed to go over the 50 feet.
I was just informed by Mr. Betts with the Howard Group that there is no agreement for the Grand Boulevard facilities to use the beach, so they will not be using the beach.
They would have to use public access.
Yes.
Okay. Very good. Any other questions? Seeing none?
Motion to approve
With conditions.
with the conditions
Second.
stated.
All right, we have a motion to approve with the conditions, and we have a second.
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And we will happily await Mr. Enfeld rejoining us. Next.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The next item is a request to approve a final order for Aslan Recycle Center, also known as Aslan Class 3 landfill. Again, I'll ask Ms. Bradley to come up and brief the board on this application.
This is a major development order application submitted by Preble Rish requesting approval of a 4-phase master plan development of a lined Class 3 landfill with a 35,000 square foot metal building to be used to recycle materials. The project's on 132.95 acres with a future land use of industrial. The total lined area for the Class 3 material is going to be 30.55 acres. The parcel received a land use change from public facilities to industrial by a large-scale amendment ordinance 2015-23 and amended for Scribner's area with ordinance 2015-28. There are no outstanding technical comments. We have received no public comment, and when I state that, staff never received any public comment. We did have one public comment at the Planning Commission from Mr. Carter. Conditions of approval. Prior to construction, the applicant must have all FDP permits, including dredge and fill permits, permit to construct, operate, modify, or close a solid waste management facility. Prior to construction, the applicant must also have an FTP, Northwest Florida Water Management District stormwater permit. An NPDES permit will also be required prior to construction activities. And unless other evidence is presented to the contrary, staff finds this meets Land Development Code and Comprehensive Plan. I'll be glad to answer any questions for the board.
What does NPDES stand for?
It's pollution control. That's the easiest way for me to say that.
Speaking of pollution control, you heard Mr. Carter this morning talk about the liner and all that, and saying it's a minimal amount, a minimum size.
Well, there's state standards that have to be met, sir, and I suspect the engineer will cover that.
Okay, is the engineer available?
Yes, he is.
Good morning, Mr. Engineer.
Good morning, Commissioners, Madam Chairman. Good morning. I understand that there are some concerns by Mr. Carter about drinking water, and that's one of the things that the Department of Environmental Protection takes seriously, and we take seriously as well. This will actually be one of the very first Class 3 landfills ever constructed that includes a liner. All the existing Class 3 landfills, including Walton County's own Class 3 landfills, are unlined facilities. And so C&D and Class 3 have been unlined facilities forever. DEP has changed their regulations to require a liner. This is a piece of 60 mil liner. This is not the minimum. This is the industry standard and what is actually required by DEP. And so, we don't get to exactly pick exactly what material we want to use. This is actually what is required by DEP. So the ultimate goal of the facility is to set up a recycling center, kind of like what they have in Tallahassee at Marpan. The Marpan facility recycles about 70% of the materials that come in. They sell rock, dirt, chips for playgrounds, all those kinds of things. And so initially our plan is to have the Class 3 facility up and running, and then to build the recycling facility to start trying to sell some of those materials. The county's Class 3 facility is good for, you've got about another 3 to 4 years of life left in it. The one on Highway 20 that Waste Pro has probably has another 2 years left in it. And after that, there will be no Class 3 facilities in Walton County.
Cliff, could you speak to the leachate and leachate collection and how it works in relation to the liner, whether it's above the liner, below the liner, and then what happens to the leachate?
Yes, sir, I would like to. When you're looking at site selection for a landfill, for example, one of the things you always want to try to find is an area that has a very thick, what we call a confining unit between where your waste would go and the surface of the drinking water aquifer, for example. And so in this case, at this site, the permeability of the soils is about a 10 to the minus 5 average, which means it'll perk about 1 inch per year. And so the layer that it has to perk through is 125 feet thick. So it would take approximately 1,500 years. If that liner leaked, it would take 1,500 years for it to make it to the groundwater table. And so there's a tremendous thick confining unit in between where the waste is going to go and where the top of the Florida aquifer would be, where your drinking water would come from. And so I've got Jeff Brown here. Jeff is the geologist that did the investigation on the site. We've done borings, installed monitoring wells, and we've got piezometers out there as well. And he is the formation guru. And so if you'd like him to talk more about it, he certainly can.
I'm satisfied with it, with your response. It sounds like it's clay down there.
It is all clay, yes, sir. It is. Yep. And so We've got it set up in 4 phases. Each phase is between 7 and 8 acres, and probably a 20, 25-year build-out is what we think. We're using, like Renee said earlier, about 31 acres of the 135 acres. And so we're, certainly not trying to stuff the site with everything that we can stuff. We've got 200-foot buffers to the wetlands, big buffers around the perimeter of the site. It's, I think we've done a good job trying to make it fit in and not maxing everything out. So.
Any other questions of the applicant? Anyone in the audience like to comment on this? If you could, yes, sir. No, not you. I believe you, applicant, you want to come first, and then him. Okay.
Just a couple of things I wanted to add to that.
Okay.
Lee Perry, P-E-R-R-Y. The Class 3 that we are going with is one step above a C&D facility, which means you can put in treated lumber, furniture, and white goods. If we have a hurricane, you're going to get all that stuff anyway. And it takes the monitoring from 5 years after the closure to 30 years. So we wanted to make sure that we cover that. So we're 30 years out on our monitoring, which is probably about 25, I think Jeff knows, but it's about $25,000 a year to do that monitoring, and that has to be done for 30 years after that. Also, we have purchased 140 acres to the east of this property. It's going to be used as a buffer. We'll have a deed restriction put on that property so that it cannot ever go into an industrial zoning. In other words, we don't want anything to go that further that way. There will be no household garbage in this facility. It can only be, when they say C&D, that's construction and demolition debris. It's when you build a house, it's those dumpsters you see. And if you have a hurricane and things get torn down, it's that material. There's no household garbage in there, so you don't have, and that's why up until recently they didn't require that they be lined. The other thing is, on top of that liner, the way that thing is set up is you put your leachate pipe in there to drain all that on top of that liner, and then you put 2 feet of sand on top of that. That's to protect the liner and the pipe in there so that we don't have any, anything going through that liner. I just wanted to add those things if you got any questions.
Lee, where's it? It was caught in the pipe. Where's it go out? Where's it?
It goes into leachate ponds that will be, it's a series of ponds that are set up with cattails and different types of plant material in there. They're lined ponds. It'll go into there. A lot of this, what happens during that treatment phase is a lot of it will be evaporated out through the plants and everything, but there's a series of about 6 or 7 ponds that it goes through before it goes to the final pond where it's tested. If it doesn't meet the DEP's requirements when it hits that last pond, it'll go back through again. So in other words, it doesn't come out of there. And if at ever a point where we couldn't get it to test right, you have to take that, siphon it out into a truck, and haul it to a sewage treatment plant.
Similar to what we do at the landfill.
Exactly. Any other questions?
Any questions of Mr. Perry? Okay.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Yes, sir. The gentleman with the hat on.
Mr. Hicks.
Mr. Hicks. Thank you for removing your hat. I appreciate that. And
sorry, you can work back a bit. It's okay. Thomas Hicks, H-I-C-K-S. A lot of questions that I had to ask have already been answered here. I own the property on the complete north side of this landfill. I own the property on the east side of the landfill and the property on the south side of the landfill. So I would naturally concern. I realize that it will devaluate probably some of the property surrounding area. I'm not opposed to against it. Mr. Perry and I have discussed this. He has actually, we have reconstructed, he has, the road going to my house so that he will have a larger buffer. Of course, the road hadn't been completed or nothing, but anyway, we're working through that. My concerns were I'm always going to live, I'm the only house below this facility. As far as I know, as long as I'm living, I'll be the only residence in that area. And but I realize that sooner or later that we have to move forward with industrial properties. We have to have facilities. I've been up in Elba, Alabama, and I realize that waste is hauled a long way, and I don't want to deprive Walton County of any progress that we deserve, and I just wanted to tell you that I was concerned enough to be here, and I'm concerned about the liners, and Lee has went through it all, and I'm not opposing it. I hate being there. I'm not going to lie to that. Nobody wants to live next to it, but I own property on Bruce Creek and Mill Creek and so on. And as far as garbage, I'll be the first to say, hey, if me going in and out, if I think there's something wrong going on, I'll be the first to let y'all know, or the county to know, you know. And me and, like I said, Lee and Lee gets along good now, and we want progress to go on. And I'm applying for a large-scale amendment in the near future to, I've got a 20-acre man-made lake that my lifetime goal is, and I'm applying for a large-scale amendment to get so that I can dig my lake. I've been after it for years, but we're going through with it. But anyway, I just want to make that comment that I believe in everybody getting along, living in harmony, and life seems to be a lot simpler when we all do. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chase. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Thank you. My name is Vincent Wilder. Last name is Wilder. I'm the general manager for a company called Disposal Services. Currently run about 18 roll-off trucks. We haul approximately about 5 million cubic feet or 200,000 cubic yards of debris right now currently to existing landfills that are in the area. I can tell you out of that 200,000, a very strong 75% of it is coming from South Walton. That is our market. I don't see that slowing down anytime soon. So there is a huge need for this facility. As was expressed earlier, the current C&D landfill in Freeport maybe has a 2-year lifespan, but that doesn't truthfully equate into volume. I think it could be shorter than that, because as the landfill goes up on a 3-to-1 slope, your working space up at the top diminishes, and currently you can barely get 3 trucks around there at the top of this 40-acre facility. So just to give you an idea on height requirements. So I think that this facility is super important for the county. I think it's located in an excellent location. It's centralized. It's in a rural area. Of course, with anything of this nature, nobody wants it in their backyard. It's hard to put anything in Walton County that's not in somebody's backyard, or at least in close proximity, but I certainly think that this piece of property has the least detriment to the fewest amount of people in the area. And like I said, I just wanted to speak on behalf and in favor for this facility. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comment? Seeing none, any more questions from the board?
Motion to approve with staff's conditions.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
The last item on our agenda this morning is a request to approve a resolution for an abandonment at Walton County 395 and 30A. I'll ask Matt Carpenter to come up and brief the board on this application.
We've got to ask you earlier, Mac, how's your grandson?
He's doing just fine. I wish I was doing as well as he was. Thank you very much. Matt Carpenter for the Planning Department. This is a petition for abandonment application submitted by Walton County proposing to abandon approximately 1.38 acres of right-of-way adjacent and contiguous to parcels on the south side of County Road 30A, just east of the intersection of County Road 395. Future land use is residential preservation. This proposed abandonment is part of a previous agreement that this board approved with the adjoining landowners for a land swap to give up some land on the south side of 30A in return for a greater opportunity on the north side of 30A to facilitate improvements of this intersection. We'd like to point out that the very last page of the exhibits is not part of this request. That was a previous proposal, but it was included in the materials related to the sketches of the proposed abandonment area. If there are any further questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I guess for council, the only thing is, we move forward with this abandonment here. At what point in time does the other side of the road become?
Mr. Vorbeck is here, and I asked him the very same question. He's going to be preparing a deed, and we'll get it delivered to us as soon as he can get back to the office and get it prepared and get it to us.
Okay.
The abandonment is actually a precondition for getting the deed and the contract, so the two run together.
Any other questions of Mr. Carpenter? Anyone else like to comment on this?
Now, if I could, the recommendation from the Planning Commission included a recommendation to move the bike path to the south side of 30A in response to one individual's testimony at the Planning Commission.
And is that your recommendation?
That is the recommendation of the Planning Commission. It's not quite consistent with the previous agreement that this board entered into. Presently, the bike path is going to be on the north side of 30A.
Yes, Mr.
Did we take,
okay.
did we take the stipulation out a certain number of years, or
Yeah.
before we could do something with the
I think it was
bike
10
path?
years in the agreement, yes, ma'am.
That's
Oh, I
what,
thought, yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
and I voted nay.
Refresh.
I mean,
yeah.
I just think that's a long time, but anyway, I don't know if
Yeah,
that.
I think that's a long time. Yes, is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment? So I thought I'd ask that. You don't say anything, Mr. Vorbeck? Wow. All right.
With that being said, I'll go ahead and motion to approve with staff comments with the bike path as previously approved on the north side.
Second.
On the bike path on the north side. Okay, we have a motion second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
We are done.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Second. Whatever.